Want to see how I create educational videos? Keep on watching. So I start up by having a workspace, and I'm using a MacBook Pro. I create a workspace on my desktop of 1920 by 1080, and I also use a program called Prompt to help me create lists and items to talk about and such. I typically use tools, specifically IntelliJ. So whenever I create a new project, I will actually use IntelliJ for my IDE, and in general, all of my projects work within that. So IntelliJ, so I can do my editing within IntelliJ. I also normally use Postman. So I will load Postman into this window, and I'll kind of offset the window so I can flip between the two of them as I need to do stuff. And a lot of times I'll use Chrome, and I'll do the same thing with Chrome. I'll set it up to be within the window, so as I need to go through and run Chrome, I can select between the IDE, Chrome, or Postman. So that's kind of how I set the tools up. I go through and I focus on training videos specifically for Java and Spring Boot. I get up in the morning. I usually start at 4 a.m. every day. I start checking websites for news, the world, the local, the US, and usually I start waking up by that point. I check my personal email, no company email because this is my time. I check my social accounts, and I dive into Udemy, YouTube, Medium, and Twitter. And if there's nothing interesting, I'll take a look at my list of classes I want to create. So based on the list of classes, if something is interesting, I'll kind of dive into it. Otherwise, I'll go upstairs and spend a little bit of time in the living room, hang out with the dogs, fix breakfast at some point for the family, and start the day. If I do decide to do a YouTube video, if something piques my interest on a new class, I'll go ahead and start working on that. And the process is fairly simple. So for YouTube, you need a YouTube channel set up, and that YouTube channel consists of a couple items. Specifically, you have a banner image, and I had someone on Fiverr create this banner image for me. And you also have a icon or channel avatar, and so I had someone on the same person actually create that for me. So that's fairly easy to get going. I use a MacBook Pro, a 2019 32 gig with 500 gig hard disk. I purchased this new. I've been happy with the performance for several years. I do have an M1 that I use, but I still use the 2019 Intel for all my video productions. In the overall equipment that I use, there's a specific amount of equipment which is extremely important, and one of the most important is to have a good microphone. I have a Blue Yeti microphone that I use, and it's kind of the standard for a lot of the streaming and recording. In addition to the Blue Yeti, I have a Rhodes boom arm, and the Blue Yeti works great when it's on a surface, but if you type on the keyboard and you have any other noises from the surface, that'll get amplified in the microphone. So I have a Rhodes arm that I can mount things on, and specifically on that Rhodes arms, I have a radius shock mount. And so the shock mount has a little rubber around it, and it isolates all the movements and noises from everything. I also have a pop filter, and the pop filter helps me when I'm close to the microphone from drowning out little noises, pops, etc., exactly what it sounds like. And sometimes you can find these bundles on Amazon to get all these different items packaged together. This isn't what I have, but there are these packages on here that you can buy that has a lot of the items. This is a different arm than what I have, but functionally I think it's equivalent. So the Blue Yeti has multiple inputs, and it is also a stereo microphone That's important because when I record my videos, I want them to be in stereo. I use ScreenFlow for the editing, and it also does the screen capture for me. ScreenFlow is a paid application, and I use this every day. It took me about 10 minutes to learn it. I'm very, very happy with the performance of it. In my overall editing, I use Photoshop, and then I do create some basic prompt information, and I use a tool called Prompt, a prompt app, and I loaded that on the Mac, and I can go through. This allows me to set up prompts and have them viewable while I'm in meetings or I'm recording, so I have that on the side. In addition, I use PowerPoint and Microsoft Office products. So in general, the overall process is simple. Once I've defined my niche, I focus on programming, specifically Java and Spring Boot API and microservices development. I use the JetBrains IDE for most of my work, and then I use Postman and a browser. I create a title first, and coming up with a good title helps me define what the class is going to be. So whatever the idea is for the class, I make sure that it drives the title. So I do a title first class development. Once I have the title, I'll probably make the thumbnail. So some of my favorite resources are vidIQ, Unsplash, and ChatGPT, which I use to help with some of the fluff and create some of the additional content. So when I create a new class, I'll kind of brainstorm, create a list of what I want, and create a bullet point, from high level, define the overall goals, what I want people to learn, and that's typically helps drive the title as well. So before I start recording, I like to set up a screen area, and as I have shown you, I set up a 1920 by 1080 area, and this is what I use to determine where my recording is. So I have a 4K monitor, so this uses a smaller portions of my monitor. That way I can have notes on the side, and I can cut and paste, or I know exactly what to be typing when I'm doing something for my cheat sheets. As I record the video, there's one section that happens at the beginning that's called the wow moment or the hook, and typically I'll do that at the end of the recording, and then I'll edit it to bring that forward so it becomes the first thing. Whenever I record and edit, ScreenFlow has the capability to remove noise. So I'll cancel the noise and then quickly go through and do my recording. As I'm doing my recording, the first thing I do is set the audio level, I'll set the video dimensions, and then I'll go through and take the hook or the wow section and cut it and move it forward. So as we go through and I start doing my actual editing, so now that I have some recording, I can actually go through and start using ScreenFlow. I can set up the dimension of it for whatever I want here, and then I can go through and I can see what's going on to the editor. I can very quickly edit information, and if I have a space like for a time right here and I want to remove that, I can mark each side of that using the T command. Then I can just actually delete that and then move it together. So most of my editings are simply removal. I rarely add content in the middle. I will record the wow section at the end, and then I'll move it at the beginning. In general, I will record straight through. If I get a phone call, knock at the door, I'll continue recording. I'll record until it's ready. As I go through, I can, just as quick as I made changes, I can undo with Control or Command Z. And one of the things that I will do is set some audio information. So if I select this audio here from my Yeti microphone, I can go through and I can set remove background noise. And that's what makes the audio usable. That way any air conditioning, fan kicking on and off or anything quickly goes away. So this is how I go about creating my videos. I will go through and export this to an MP4. I'll give it a meaningful name, so like a class name, learning to create videos, something such as that. I'll export this and then import it into YouTube. I'll add my thumbnail. I'll set a good description, and always try to add some tags into your video. Don't spend a lot of time doing that, but add 3 hashtags to your video is probably the most important thing that you'll find you need to do. As far as final SEO notes, before uploading your file, rename it to something using targeted keywords for the file name. Insert your keywords into the video title. Create a nice SEO optimized video description. Tag your video, but don't worry about too much with that. Add start and end screens to increase your YouTube channels, where you say, hey, don't forget to follow me and like the video now. You can leave a pinned comment as well on your video, and that will help with some SEO. So that's it. Everything's pretty straightforward. Hope you liked the video, and let me know your comments.